What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a model airplane review. It's your host Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the NG model 1 to 400 scale Lufthansa Boeing 747-8. In this video, I'll do an in-depth review of the model and its features, and at the end of the video, I'll give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. The box is a cardboard box with dimensions of 18.5 centimeters for length, 18.5 centimeters tall, and 5.5 centimeters wide. Or for width. I'll show you around the box now. So here's the front, here's the bottom, right side, top, left side, and the back side. Included in the box is the model, assembled, painted, and ready to display, and also included is a Collector Rewards program card. Before I begin my review, I'll give you a quick 360 of the model. The fuselage length is 19 centimeters, wingspan is 17 centimeters, and from the ground to the top of the vertical stabilizer, this model is 5.2 centimeters tall. Accurate to 1 to 400 scale and pretty darn big for a model airplane. This model is also made primarily out of die-cast metal. We'll start the review with the fuselage. The nose profile on this model looks pretty good, no complaints about the shape itself. Painted detail looks good in the form of the paint application being okay. There really isn't much paint application stuff going on up here. Now, printed detail is pretty good and consistent. There's really nothing to complain about so far. You can even read the name of the aircraft here, which I'm probably going to butcher even though it looks simple to pronounce, so I'm not going to embarrass myself by doing that. Now, the one thing I would like to discuss is the cockpit windows. This was one of the first releases from NG on their new 1 to 400 scale 747-8. And it appears as though some collectors have found that the cockpit windows are a bit larger than they should be. Now, personally, I do agree with them. They do seem ever so slightly larger, but not by too much. So do what you will with that information. It's not the worst issue. It's really not that easy to notice unless you look into it like we are looking at it here. So draw your own conclusions with that. I'll move down the fuselage, and here you can see paint application seems to be pretty good. The finish on the model, don't mind the finish being a little bit off. I haven't had time to wipe the oily finish that sometimes accompanies these models, so apologies for that. But aside from this small cockpit window thing, everything looks really good so far, so we're off to a strong start. Here's the vertical stabilizer. This section in particular has also been discussed by collectors. Some say that the blue, or just the overall colors here, are a bit too dark, and I do kind of agree. The blue does look a shade dark, but not by too much, so I won't hold that against NGs. I'm also not intimately familiar with Lufthansa's livery, so that's why I'm not very certain about it. But shape looks good, and application of details and everything also looks good. The only issue I have with it is the top here. So you can see it a little bit better at this angle. Let's see if I can crank up the exposure so you can use the rudder as a reference. All right, so with the exposure fully up, the rudder detail ends up here, yet I noticed that there's a slight angle from the leading edge to the trailing edge. That shouldn't be there. It should be perfectly straight. So what I'm saying is that up the front end here is a little bit shorter than it should be. So it's a small shape issue. Here is the right side. On the right side, things seem to be in order as well. I won't provide much commentary over here other than everything I've said about the left side can also be applied to the right side. Detail is excellent here on the fuselage, so really no complaints except for that cockpit window stuff and a few color imperfections. Moving on to the giant wings on this model, the wings look pretty good. There's lots of detail to go around. Molded detail in the form of the control surfaces is very clearly defined. However, I do see an interesting pattern. Here you can see a slight shade of gray within the recessed details here. Here on the aileron, which is closer to the outside of the wing, it's a lot harder to see. And this is an overall color fade, which is present even more so on the right wing. So small imperfection. I don't think it really messes with the model too much, but it's just something I noticed. All of the detail is visible and it's not filled in though, and I think that's what matters the most. So I won't be too critical of that. Printed detail looks good. It's pretty simple. It's just lines on the wings. And painted detail, the white surface of the wing is accurate. And then we have the leading edge slats being the silver color. Look, that looks pretty good. Here's that wingtip, nice and sharp, so be careful if you're handling this model. And on the underside, you'll notice that the wing is gray. This is accurate to the old Lufthansa livery. They did paint the top of their aircraft's wings white and the bottom gray, matching the belly, which is quite interesting. And down here, they also did paint the leading edge slats here white as well, or very light gray. So very detailed on the wings, no complaints. Now I'm going to move to the rear of the aircraft. Here is the horizontal stabilizers. These look pretty good so far. I don't see anything to complain about. That's just a piece of trash there. Sorry about that. So nothing to really complain about. It looks pretty good. APU looks good as well. Everything seems to be perfectly aligned, and there's even a hole for the APU exhaust, so very nicely detailed. And down here, things seem to be in order as well, so no complaints with the rear section of the aircraft either. Moving on to the engines in this model look huge and fantastic. Huge as in, well, they're just big engines, inherently large. It's not like they're oversized. So the detail seems to be pretty good. The engines might be slightly angled downwards, from what I can see. Ever so slightly. Yeah, the engine on the outside, engine 1 here looks a little bit angled downwards, not by much though, so I won't complain about it. But aside from that, engine detail looks to be pretty good. Printed detail on them is definitely not lacking. Something suspicious is definitely going on with that. There we go. All right, so I do see that there is a bit of an angle on this engine. So the engines are bent slightly downwards in from the forward direction at least. So hard to see, but it's there. Now, with regards to the fan details, that's impressive. Unfortunately, they do not spin. Not that you should be playing with the fans on the 1:400 scale model anyway, but they are very nicely detailed, so that's good to see. Now, something I had on a different model, not a Lufthansa 747-8, but it was an Atlas Air 747-8 from NG. I got a right-sided engine on the left side of my model, and I was able to determine that from the engine strake being not facing the fuselage, but away from the fuselage. On this model, all of the engine strakes are in the correct position, as you can see. So that's something I would like to point out, though, that there is a chance of that happening. I'd imagine it's low, but it happened to me, so I do want to bring that to your attention. Moving on to aerial details, this model features antennas and sat domes. Up here we have this antenna right here on top of the infamous, or not infamous, but the famous hump, the second floor of the 747, so that looks good. Here we have a gray sat dome. This looks pretty good. It's flush with the fuselage, and it doesn't appear to be misaligned. Ever so slightly angled, but not by much, so I'll cut them some slack there. Here's this antenna. It appears to be slightly bent. So, oh, it's actually loose. All right, so we got a loose antenna. It didn't fall out, though, so I won't complain, but I'm going to have to re-glue that. That's something I've noticed with NG's 747-8s. The antennas sometimes are loose, bent, or straight up fall off. Again, I'm going to refer to that 747 model that had the wrong engine. That model also had two antennas that were loose and bent, so I had to fix those. So quality isn't the greatest, or quality control, I should say. And then here's this very small antenna back here. This looks pretty good. Now on the underside of the aircraft, we have only one antenna right here. So this looks good. It's firmly attached, so I really won't complain about it. There's really not that much to say. Now, while we're down here, let's talk about the landing gear. The main landing gear are done very nicely. All of the wheels roll smoothly, and they seem to be mounted correctly, so no complaints. And the detail on them is pretty nice. The nose gear also looks pretty good, as you can, or if you can see that, that'd be great. There we go. So detail seems to be pretty great. What is that? All right, so I'm seeing a bit of staining. What the heck is that? There is some sort of gross residue on the model. What my pointer's pointing at, you see that brownish black stuff? That's not supposed to be there. So that's gross, but the detail on the gear looks decent. And now I'm going to have a real field day trying to get rid of that. It was a clump of hair, but yeah, that's or dust. I just want to say dust. I don't want to say hair, but as you can see, I've removed the clump. Here is a view at the front of the aircraft. So wing flex looks good. The wing pattern seems to be okay. Vertical stabilizer looks vertical. Doesn't seem angled. Horizontal stabilizers look good. Gear balance looks good. Engine clearance looks good. What is the cockpit window printing? Come on, if you screw up the size, don't screw up the orientation. As you can see, it is slightly angled. That is a very unusual issue from NG. That's why, hence my reaction. I definitely wasn't expecting that. That's the end of my review. Now time for my personal opinion and recommendation. So this model has a few quality control imperfections that really do mess with me. The cockpit window printing, that's something that's historically messed with me. I don't really like that too much. But I've noticed that antennas not being attached right and just parts, not the incorrect parts being attached in the incorrect places, that's not good. It wasn't on this model, but it was on a different model from NG as well. So quality is kind of lower on the NG 747-8s. That's not cool to see. However, that doesn't mean that this model is bad. It has its imperfections, like any other model does. Some of them a bit more alarming than others. But I still recommend this model. It's pretty solid. Now, if the things I pointed out are a deal breaker for you, then you also have other options from other manufacturers, which other manufacturers have historically produced good 1 to 400 scale Lufthansa Boeing 747-8s. So if you choose not to purchase this model for whatever reason, you have options as well. So I recommend this one, but you can also get the other ones, which I do like that flexibility when buying models. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching the review. If you have anything you'd like to say, feel free to drop that down below in the comment section. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And that's all for today. Like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more model airplane content. Jeez. I had a total brain fart there. Jeez, I've been reviewing all day, so I'm starting to lose it a little bit. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Happy building, happy collecting. See you in my next video. Take care of yourselves. See you next time.